Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Chiagozie Adindu and this is Choices with Chichi. Thank you for always taking time out of your very busy schedule to join me. I don't take it for granted whether you're a first timer or a returnee. You guys have my heart. You literally encourage me to do what I do and I'm super grateful, right? So today I'm going to be sharing my experience raising a strong-willed child. And before I even go into it, I just want to mention or acknowledge some of the comments I got from my last video about the possibility of parenting without yelling. So it looked like the bulk, a lot of you were happy to stop yelling, but we're thinking of the alternative form of discipline. And so it was like, oh yeah, we're going to stop yelling, right? But then we're going to pick up the cane and flog these kids, in the stead of yelling. But I just want to say that I'm not going to tell you how to raise your child or how to discipline your child. I'm still trying to figure it out myself. But one thing I'll say is that whatever disciplinary method you adopt, make sure you do it in moderation, make sure it's done out of love, consider the personality of your child, and think about the long run effect it will have on them. In considering the personality of your child, there are some kids that don't even need caning. Once you sit down with some children and talk, sometimes they get the drift. Some people need caning. I am team discipline. I am team spare the rod, spoil the child, right? But I do not feel like every time you need to flog. And then you need to be careful on you need to consider the long-term effect it has on your child so that your child does not grow to become immune to caning. Even though I know that there are certain canes you can never be immune to, like my father's caning. Before my dad flogged us, for real, guys, and I'm not even joking. Before my dad flogged us, he would lift the cane to God. Like he would go down on his knees, kneel down, raise the cane to God and start praying. I don't know what he's telling God. And I don't know if he ever heard anything from God. He just used to, I don't know, the whole process used to terrify us. And guys, if that cane touches you, trust me, you can't be immune to it. It was coated with the Holy Spirit. He's flogging not just the nonsense out of you, he's flogging the Spirit of God into you. So yeah, just as an aside, but basically you get my drift. So yeah, into the matter for today. My experience raising a strong-willed child. Let me start by saying that your sister here literally prayed for a strong-willed child. At the time, though, I didn't know that there was such a thing as strong-willed children. In the context, I know it right now. When I was praying for a strong-willed child, I was actually praying for a child who will be independent, have a mind of their own, not easily swayed, Yeah, so that's to say that you guys be careful what kind of things you say and pray, because our God is a prayer answering God. Yeah, so don't be like me tomorrow and be like, oh God, because some days I'm looking at my son and I'm like, Father, I know I prayed for a strong-willed child, right? But I mean, you should have put some curves around these very sharp, defined edges because, yeah, basically. Anyway, so yeah, I prayed for a strong-willed child. And I don't know if this happens to every other mother, but when I was pregnant with my son, I kind of knew his personality before I had him. And it's happened with my two children. I begin to sense their person, their character, who they will be. Even though it's vague, but I hear certain words. It's like I can sense their spirits, quote and unquote. And it's an amazing thing. It's just another level of connecting with your child that's entirely out of this world. So when I was pregnant with Jaden, my first, I actually knew I was carrying a strong-willed child somehow. And then I started seeing manifestations like 2-3 weeks after he was born. He was very, very insistent on doing certain things. Now, basically, who are strong-willed children? Strong-willed kids are children who the world calls stubborn. Yeah. The world calls them stubborn, strong-headed, insistent. Sometimes you hear they don't hear word. I don't know what's wrong with them. Those are the people we are talking about when we say someone is strong-willed. Even though people believe that strong-willed is a negative personality trait, I actually believe it's a power personality trait. It's an amazing personality trait. And I'm believing that now, having done some research, and just allowed myself learn on this parenting journey. It's an amazing personality, and I'm going to share with you, along the way. Basically, strong-willed children are audacious, they are courageous, they are brave. In most cases, they are confident. What makes them distinct is that they live life on their own terms, they play by their rules. You see how other children do not want people to tell them what to do. For strong-willed children, they find it unbearable. Like, why are you telling me what to do? Right? So that's what makes them really distinct. And most times, especially when it comes to authority, they have a lot of issues. They have power tussles and struggles with their parents, teachers in school, and a host of figure authorities that if they are not, if that personality is not kept in check from very early. I've been doing a lot of research, and I have come to understand that this strong-willed personality is actually inherited from the parents, so it's hereditary. So before you go out and tell people how your child is stubborn, you might want to look inwardly and find out whether it's you or your partner who has the strong-willed personality trait, or in your family, because kids are not born out of the blues. They come from families, and family traits flow in them. So imagine if you have two strong-willed parents. My God, we're probably talking about tough-minded children. So basically, guys, I just needed to lay all that foundation so that you understand, the difference between child willful disobedience and childish, irresponsibility, if that's what we're going to call it, as I'm progressing. Now, like I said, we knew we had a strong-willed child. I knew I had a strong-willed child early, and I didn't know it was strong-willed child. I just used to tell people my son's personality is very strong. He has a mind of his own. He doesn't really obey authority. And as he grew up, we started seeing a lot of manifestations. He will argue with you. He didn't want to be told what to do. He will do the opposite, for real, guys. Like when you tell him sit, he wants to stand. And I was telling someone, I said, okay, if he likes to do the opposite, should I converse with him or communicate with him in the opposite? So if I want him to sit, maybe I should just say stand so that he will sit. And the person was like, no, we need to find out what this is. If you do that, you'll probably be, institutionalizing his disobedience. And so I remember I'll go and I'll show my friends that this is what I'm noticing. He and then another thing is he would, when he gets frustrated, you don't even want to see. It wasn't a pretty sight. So strong-willed children have very high levels of frustration. That's because, in my own understanding and from my experience, these people are practically tiny children wanting to do adult things, and half the time they're unsuccessful. In their head, there's a way they are wired. So once it doesn't work that way, they get highly frustrated. My son will beat himself, he will throw a tantrum, he will pinch his face. It just used to be a very terrible sight. If you're there, you won't even enjoy what you're seeing. Like, you're going to be super scared. But one thing again that we knew that helped us understand that we had a strong-willed child was his inability to switch. And that means that if he had something in mind he wanted to do, he needed to do it first before he switches to what you wanted him to do. And so for me, that was one big issue we kept on having. It was like, I'm talking to you and I need you to do this. And he's like, no, mommy, I was on my way to do this. I want to drop this thing first. I want to watch what I'm doing first. He just couldn't switch. So if he comes into my room, for instance, and I say, oh yeah, go and get your brother's stuff. He's like, but mommy, I wanted to tell you. I'm like, no, this is an emergency. Go and get. He's like, no, mommy, I wanted to tell you. And we'll keep going. And sometimes I'll get angry and I'll spank him or yell at him. But you guys are working on the yelling thing. So, and he will just have a meltdown. He will literally stand there and start shaking and keep repeating, I wanted to tell you. I wanted to tell you. Ah, my goodness. So, apparently it's a thing. They are not wired that way. Once their mind is set on something, they want to get over it. And then, of course, like I said, he used to argue a lot. Mommy, it's not like that. My teacher said this. I heard this on the TV. Don't say that to me. And then I'll be like, no, I'm your mommy. I know more than you. Keep quiet and listen. You need to be teachable. Oh my God. I'm glad I'm laughing now. But some 3 months, 4 months ago, it wasn't funny. It had hit its peak, and I was literally looking for, solution everywhere we went. Right. So basically these are strong-willed children, and I want to say that, like I said earlier on, it's not a terrible personality, because I have seen an amazing angle. So I feel like it's a matter of perspective. So I have started looking at his strong-willed personality from a different angle, and I'm enjoying it. I am so enjoying it, because some of the benefits of having a strong-willed child are: number one, they have a mind of their own. So true, they cannot be taken advantage of easily. So my son goes to school last week, and I'm picking him around 3, and he still has his cardigan on. As I picked him, his teacher says, "Oh, we tried to take off the cardigan, but he insisted on wearing it," which was weird. So we go to the car, and I'm like, "Oh, so why do you still have your cardigan on?" And he says, "Mommy, everybody was sneezing and coughing, and I did not want cold and catarrh to get into my body." Boy, was I proud of him. Like, yo. So what, because they have a mind of their own, they don't usually succumb to peer pressure easily, right? And then again, they are fantastic learners. My son is a fantastic learner. He likes to know the science behind stuff. So you don't just tell him, "Bring that green chair." He wants to understand why. Why that green chair? "Mommy, there are 2 chairs there. Let me get you the yellow one." And I'm like, "No, the green chair, because we are doing green decoration for so and so's birthday. So he's going to blend." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So if someone comes and removes that chair, you have him to deal with, because he'll tell you, "No, it's for the decoration. If you remove it, it won't match," right? So he's always asking why. Now, when people ask why, it can annoy people in authority. Like, why? I'm giving you an instruction, you're asking me why. But what he has done for us is that we now learn to explain to him. And so I have to be very intentional about how I send him or what I say to him. And I don't do things mindlessly, because, it's like you're working with a toddler, so do this, don't do this. No, I know he's going to ask me why, so I need to be very deliberate, and I have to have an answer ready. Another benefit is that he has the ability to think on he's a very fast thinker. He thinks on his feet. Because he's used to opposing authority, which is not so good, and he's used to doing the opposite, he's able to think of the opposite immediately. I don't know, like, do you get? So if I say, for instance, sit down here, he's like, "Oh, Mommy, I want to sit down here because blah, 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 blah." So like I said, it's perspective. So I'm like, how do you even know to say the opposite of what I have just said, right? So they have the ability to think on their feet. For us as parents, it has helped us to become very intentional about what we do. My son, and then one thing I get about strong-willed children is that they can be very bossy. They're bossy to their mates, they're bossy to elders. If you have given them an instruction and they have obeyed, you best not default on that instruction, because they will set you right. I remember coming in one day, and I saw something that people had brought into the house. I was about to pick and eat, and he was like, "Stop it, Mommy. Go and wash your hand." I'm like, "Yes, sir." Right? Every once in a while, we tell him to use the power words, polite words like, "Oh, please, Mommy, do this. Thank you so much." Otherwise, his default setting is, "Hey, you here, you sit. I want you to stand up only when I say so." Yeah, so that kind of that kind of attitude. So like I said, for parenting, for us, the benefit for us is that it has made us very, very intentional. It has also made us be very patient with him. You know how before you have children, you're like the perfect parent on paper. Or when I have my kids, I'll do this, I will not do this. Parenting a strong-willed child has made us legit, as in instilled patience into us, and it's not even a joke, honestly, guys. So yeah, those are some of the benefits I will just list. And so to have peace in our home, my husband and I have had to do a lot of things. We've had to change a lot of things, to accommodate him and to grow as parents into being the ideal or the good parents to him, to a strong-willed child. One of it is that we had to stop yelling. We don't yell. My son hates to. First of all, he hates to be told what to do. Then you're yelling. There are times, on 2 different occasions, he has had to ask me and my husband, "Why are you yelling? Dada, why are you yelling? Mommy, why are you shouting at me?" There are days when I know of 2 scenarios where I passed and I spanked him playfully. And he turned and he said, Mommy, don't beat me. Why did you beat me? Hey, I'm like, sorry, I'm joking with you. He said, okay. Yeah, okay. This time better. So we don't yell. We do a lot of conversations with him. We run a lot of conversations. So you need to explain to him. You really need to be patient and explain to him why this has to go this way and not this way. Thirdly, we give him a lot of options. A lot. That way, in his head, he's the one making the decision, but you already know where you want him to end. So there are times when he'll wake up and say, Mommy, I don't want to wear my white trainers to school. I want to wear the orange trainers for sports. Former me, Jaden, you have to wear it. This is the canvas your school said you have to wear every Wednesday. I'm like, oh, you don't want to? Why? And he's like, yeah. The other day, he'll shut up one long story and go. And I'm like, oh, okay. Why don't we wear this orange on Saturday when we are going for football academy? Will that work? And so I'm shaking my head because I'm telling him that's the only option available. Will that work? And he's like, okay, Mommy. And we ease into wearing the shoe, and the rest of the day is blissful, as opposed to arguing with him and having a tantrum-filled day with plenty spanking and plenty apologizing, because most times parents know sometimes you will spank, it's still the same you that will say sorry because you just want to maintain your sanity that day, right? So we do a lot of conversations. Then we remove triggers. My son argues a lot about what he's wearing when his wardrobe is open. So before I go to take his bath for him, I close all the wardrobes and I bring out what I want him to wear. So that's the only option available, right? If I notice that this week he's been having issues with either myself or his nanny over what to wear on his feet, we remove every other thing and we leave only that. So you remove triggers, everything that triggers arguments or resistance, you remove it. Practical steps, right? We create a lot of routines around him. Children thrive well with routines, and that's something I have learned. It's not very easy, but honestly, it has blessed us. For instance, my son sleeps by 9. By 8, see, 8, he has to be in bed. I have watched him, and I know that after 8, he becomes so tired and he becomes cranky. And once he begins to demand, you've lost control. Remember that with strong-willed children, it's about control. Their control versus your control. And while you're the parents, you must know that with them, you cannot invalidate their sense of control or wanting to control. So once it passes 8 o'clock, I have lost control because he's going to be so edgy. And I don't know why children just get so edgy and annoying when they are feeling sleepy. So I make sure he sticks to that, his routine. And I tell him, oh, by 7:30, it's time to go and read our storybook or say a prayer. And we go and he's saying a prayer and I take over and I begin to pray one very long prayer because I want him to sleep in between, and by 8 he's asleep. Once we miss it, and I've also come to understand that there is a role food plays in the well-being of children generally, but especially strong-willed children. Once or twice I've taken my son out for parties and he throws a huge tantrum midway or at the beginning of the party or at the end. And I've noticed that good food, feeding him properly, and him being very well rested are very key to managing his emotions. So if he's not properly fed, we have to feed at home before we go for any party because sometimes he gets carried away. And when hunger hits, he becomes... So when he's at the edge of an emotion, he begins to make unreasonable demands. I want this and I want it now. I want it now. And he begins to throw himself on the floor and cause a scene. So one thing we do is that we make sure he is well rested when we need to do something big and he has eaten very properly. So I just thought to share some of the learning points so far. Yes, and then sometimes you just cut him some slack. There is the difference between childish irresponsibility and willful disobedience. So I know I'm raising a strong will, but I don't come on hard on him every time. It's like, oh, I have a stubborn child. Anything he does is you again. No, not necessarily. Sometimes he just wants to be a child. Sometimes he's just playing. Sometimes he's just being funny. So we laugh with him and we just are in the moment with him. And of course, the last one is we don't make unrealistic demands. So once my son is crying, you can't tell him to do his homework. It doesn't make sense because he won't do it. He doesn't succumb to threats easily. So at that point, I let the cry run its course, cause, and after that we can now have a discussion as to why I spanked him or why he's crying, and then we can try to do homework. So don't place unrealistic demands on him because you're the mother or the father and you expect him or her to do it immediately, right? Second to the last point I want to make is that in my research, guys, guess what I noticed? Jesus was a strong-willed child. Jesus was a strong-willed child, and you see it in his life throughout. From when his parents or him, I don't know who left who, but from when he stayed back to teach the priests and the prophets in the temple, that is a sign of a strong-willed child. They're in a mind of their own. They have a mind of their own, and they're in a land of their own. They don't do things because people are doing it. They are unique. They are distinct. Another place where we see Jesus being a strong-willed child is at the wedding in Canaan. So his mom notices that the wine has finished, and she comes to him and she says, "Oh, my darling son, you're a Duro, so just do what makes you Jesus, help us create more wine." And he's like, "Woman, my hour has not come." That's to say, I have it in mind, don't tell me what to do. The mother already knows her son, so she's like, "Disciples, please come. Stick with him. He'll tell you what to do. When he tells you what to do, do it." So that's a mother that has understanding. She didn't start saying, "I don't like the way you talk to me. We've been talking about this since you were 2 years old. What is wrong with you? I'm your mother, blah, blah, blah." She already knows her son. So she's like, "You know what, just you guys deal with him with understanding." And that honestly is my advice to parents. Give yourself some time to grow into it. Every time is not beating and shouting. Honestly, like I said, I used to be a chronic yeller spanker, and if it's coming from me, believe me, every time is not yelling. Sometimes you want to understand why your child is the way they are. Try to research, do a little research. Half the time, your kids are taking after the personality of you or your wife. So you want to do a little bit of introspect, reasoning and all, and find out why your children are the way they are. Parenting is not easy, guys, but parenting a strong-willed child, that's another level entirely. And I also want to leave a little word of advice for people who are around parents and children who are strong-willed. Please cut them some slack. When a parent is trying to correct their child, that's not the time to come and be forming auntie or uncle of the year. Let them do their thing. You can't love someone's child more than them. So please, hold it. When the whole disciplining process is done, you can now go later and say, "Oh, come to me, my darling." But don't just cut in, because half the time I've experienced it a lot, and I've witnessed it even with other people. People just come and they're like, "Oh no, you're too hard on him. Leave him. My darling, come. Don't mind your mommy." Yeah, don't do that. That's really rude. That's wrong. And you're literally diluting someone's efforts at parenting rights. So guys, that's my 2 cents, my little aspire to perspire on raising strong-willed children. And I hope that you have been blessed. Leave your comments. Let me know if you can relate with anything I have said. And I hope that someone is really encouraged to do right by their children. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you some other time on my channel. Until then, remain blessed. Don't forget to subscribe. Share this with who you think needs to hear this. I love you all. Ciao. Bye.